right.
That's us all recording and live, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Please note that this is a meeting with all members and officers attending remotely. The public section of this meeting will be recorded and published online for viewing after the meeting. Can members activate their cameras when possible? And can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. Can I confirm that all members present today have been able to access the presentations uploaded in the calendar invite for the meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. As we have now been operating remotely for quite a while and the committee members should now be used to this type of proceedings, I will not remind you of the technical operations, but don't hesitate to contact me or an officer should there be any questions. As usual, if any members lose connection or have technical issues during the meeting, please alert the committee officer by a separate Teams chat message if possible, and support will be available from an ICT officer. I will also attempt to schedule breaks as per past meetings. Item 1, Sederant. Ms. Donovan, can I ask you to take the Sederant by means of a roll call? And for the benefit of viewers, can you please also remind the officers' names who will help us today? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The officers we have today, we have the planning advisor to the LRB, which is Bruce Strachan, the legal advisor to the LRB, which is Martin Ingram, and the clerk to the committee, which is myself, Paige Donovan. I'm going to go through the roll call now. If you could let me know that you're present, please. Councillor Lonche.
Present.
Councillor Davidson.
Present.
Councillor Dickinson.
Present.
Councillor Goodhall.
Present.
Councillor Simpson.
Present.
And Councillor Sutherland, please.
Present.
Chair, all members are present.
Thank you. As members cannot attend an item being reviewed in their own ward and should therefore withdraw for that particular item, is there any declaration of interest from present members? This is the case. Can you please raise your hand and provide the item number, the nature of the declaration, and whether you will leave the meeting? If necessary, then Ms. Donovan will remove these members from the meeting for consideration of that item, and said members should remain out with the meeting until invited to return. I do not see any indication. Thank you. Item 2, public sector equality duty. This committee is required to agree to give due regard to its duties under the Equality Act. Members should therefore acknowledge the public sector equality duty when considering each of the reviews before them today. If this is not the case, and if you do not agree, then please indicate using the hands up function, and legal advice will be sought for the member concerned. I do not see any indication. Thank you. Item 3, minute of LRB meeting of 26th of June 2026. We have before us the draft minute of the local review body meeting of 26th of June 2026 for approval. Can the members who were present at this meeting therefore confirm that this is an accurate record and approve the minute? If this is not the case, please indicate using the hands up function. Anybody present at last meeting? I wasn't there, so I cannot.
No, minutes fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, minute accepted. Item 4, a spreadsheet highlighting relevant policies for each review. Committee members, can you please note the list of policies which should be considered for each review as compiled in the spreadsheet provided? Item 5, statement of outstanding business. Colleagues will now be provided with a list of outstanding business and actions, and we are consulted on how we wish to proceed. I'm told Mr. Strachan will present this item, and we will intimate our decision thereafter. Mr. Strachan, can you please proceed?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hello, members. List of outstanding business. There's 2 items on here. LRB 653, which was heard at committee at the end of March. We are still awaiting some information from the applicant for this one. The last correspondence, they have been sort of giving us reasonably regular updates. The last correspondence from the agent was at the end of July, which indicated that they had had some issues getting the dust and the noise assessment done, and they were just trying to confirm final timescales for a dust impact assessment. So depending what the local review body says to me, I would hope that that information will be forthcoming in the coming weeks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. But do you expect us to decide?
Well, it's just for noting, or if members wish to, make any comment or set a new deadline or anything like that, then I'm happy to go back to the applicant or agent on that basis.
Okay. Well, we have noted. Any particular comment from members on this? I do not see any any indication. Thank you. We'll proceed with you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair. I'll move on to the second item here, which is 656, LRB 656. And members that were present will be aware that a site visit has taken place now to observe the site and the local area, and a condition survey has now been submitted by the applicant outlining the condition of the existing door. The planning service has commented on that condition survey, and the final step in the process is that the applicant has an opportunity to respond to the planning service's comments. So we're just waiting to see what if anything comes from that final stage in the process, and then we'll be in a position to hopefully bring that one back to the meeting on the 25th of September, when Councillor Davidson, as you're saying, would be in the chair with Councillor Menard and Councillor Victor, who were to give us the quorum, the 3 members who were present on the site visit to take a decision on that one. So hopefully that one will be reported to the next meeting.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Sutherland, please.
Just want to intimate for transparency, the next one we're about to read is within my ward, but obviously there's no decision being made today, so just to let you know. Thank you.
Okay, so you will remain in the meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you. We'll proceed now to new reviews. Item 6, LRB 657. Notice of review against refusal of full planning permission for erection of dwelling house, including demolition of existing dwelling house at Brayside, Bankery, Devnik, AB 12.5XP, reference APP 2025-1733 committee. The planning advising officer for this item is Mr. Bruce Strachan, who will present this report. Ms. Donovan, before Mr. Strachan proceeds, and for the minute of the item, can you please remind us whose members will take part in this case?
I was on mute. Thank you very much, Chair. The members who will take part in this item are Councillors Launcher, Davidson, Dickinson, Goodhall, Simpson and Sutherland.
Thank you. Mr. Strachan, can you now please present the notice of review and the slides? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can see the PowerPoint I'm sharing. So this review relates to the refusal of an application for full planning permission for demolition of an existing dwelling house and erection of a replacement dwelling house on land at Brayside in Bankery, Devnik, as indicated by the location plan on the slide in front of you. The refused location plan shows the site in relation to Stonehaven and South Teesside roads, and at the top the red line boundary includes the existing domestic curtilage and the red lines for the routes for the disposal of foul and surface water drainage. Slide 3 shows the red line boundary in its entirety, with the drainage discharging to that watercourse to the north. This slide shows the existing site plan, sorry, I'm just trying to find my laser. There we go. With the existing dwelling house here and ancillary buildings concentrated in the northeast corner of the site, the rest being domestic garden ground or area of hard standing, which is used for parking or storage. These are the elevations of the existing dwelling house and buildings. Members should note the vernacular design, the appearance and the materials that are relevant to the particulars of this case. And these are the existing floor plans that show the scale and the modest nature of the existing dwelling house with sort of 2 rooms downstairs and 2 rooms upstairs. The refused proposed site plan shows the footprint of the new dwelling house in roughly the same position, but obviously on a larger scale. Access would remain unchanged with principal access coming in from the west here, but there is another access off the public road to the south here as well. Parking is shown for vehicles with some drainage infrastructure towards the southern edge of the site. The north and east, the rear elevation are shown on this slide. And here we have the south and the west, or the front elevation of the proposed new dwelling house. Note the granite gable end here, which is proposed to reuse downtakings from the existing cottage. Slide 10 shows the ground floor plan of the proposed house and the upper floor and the roof plan. The next 3 slides are visualizations prepared to show how the new dwelling could look. So the first one of that principal elevation, this one of the rear elevation, and this one also the principal elevation from a slightly different angle. It is proposed to remove 3 trees indicated by the red dots here on the eastern boundary. The tree survey confirms that these are U category trees, so the lowest category of trees, and necessary to be removed for safety reasons. The other trees would remain and be protected. Excuse me. So this aerial photograph shows the application site, so it's in this area here with the existing dwelling house and other buildings, garage, etc. in that northeast corner. And this photograph is of the front elevation of the existing house from the garden. And from closer, the natural stone detailing can be seen, and the foundation stones are actually visible in this one. This is the north-facing gable of the cottage, and this is the view of the house from the south, with a garage and outbuilding also in view, and then the trees along the eastern boundary here. The existing rear garden, the existing rear elevation leads to a relatively enclosed rear garden. And then looking the other direction in the rear garden, this is the view of some of those other outbuildings. And finally, this is the view looking west along that principal elevation, which you then take a left and it takes you out to the public road. The planning history for the site includes previous applications for the alteration and extension of the dwelling house, one of which was withdrawn in 2021 and one which was refused in 2023. Subsequent to that, pre-application advice was sought for the erection of a replacement dwelling house. The application was supported by planning and design statements, a bat and tree survey, a drainage report, structural survey, and a whole life carbon assessment. 2 representations were received to the application stating support for the proposal, which has saying it has an appealing design and would be in keeping with the area and result in a more energy efficient building. Consultees did not raise any objections or concerns subject to suitable conditions and informatives. Within the report of handling, the planning service state that the site comprises of an existing cottage and outbuildings in the Greenbelt. Local development plan policy supports the sensitive conversion and extension of a vernacular building in the Greenbelt, but not its replacement. National Planning Framework 4 supports the 1-for-1 replacement of existing permanent homes where this meets other criteria. Planning Service goes on to say that the brownfield policy is considered relevant in this case, which it acknowledges is disputed in the planning statement. The structural survey outlines issues and provides recommendations, but does not conclude that the building is unsuitable for conversion. The Planning Service has reservations about the carbon calculations, which would not in itself justify replacement and a departure from policy, it says. Despite refusal of a previous application, the Planning Service says there is no reason to believe that the existing dwelling house is not capable of being extended, that the design they do acknowledge will not impact on local amenity or the character of the area, and that technical matters along with the tree and the bat survey findings are acceptable. The Planning Service promoted two reasons for refusal. Firstly, that the loss of a vernacular cottage that contributes to the rural character of the Aberdeenshire Greenbelt is contrary to Local Development Plan Policy R1. And secondly, that it has not been demonstrated that the existing house is incapable of retention and refurbishment to conserve the embodied energy within it, which they say is contrary to brownfield policy of NPF 4. Now, members, on this point, my view would have to be that as an existing occupied dwelling house, the relevance of policy 9 of NPF 4, the brownfield policy, is questionable, although the reasoning about the possibility to extend or refurbish instead of replacement would comply with the LDP policy. So it's understood why the Planning Service have mentioned that aspect. The applicant in their supporting statement highlights that the proposed development complies with a large number of relevant policies. They say that the determining issue is therefore whether demolition of the existing house complies with development plan policies, and if not, do other material considerations justify a departure. The applicant goes on to say, as NPF 4 was adopted after the local development plan, policy 8 of NPF 4 must take precedence over policy R1 of the local development plan where there is any conflict. The Planning Service accept that the proposal complies with policy 8 of NPF 4, so policy R1 of the local development plan, the agencies cannot lawfully be used to refuse the application. It is the applicant's position that the use of the brownfield policy is not applicable, as this is not a vacant or derelict building. If it were, sufficient justification is provided by the structural survey showing demolition is required and that this has benefits over the retention of the dwelling house. The statement by the applicant continues to say that in addition, material considerations justify departing from policy. These material considerations include that the building is not protected, i.e. listed, that it is appropriate and will not, that the design is appropriate and will not impact on the greenbelt or the wider area. It will result in a less developed area for biodiversity enhancement, will result in a high quality and sustainable home, and will minimise carbon emissions. So members, the key planning considerations for this case are, for this review are that the Planning Service does not accept that the principle of replacing the existing dwelling house can be accepted due to conflicts with development plan policies. The applicant's position is that there is a distinction between policy requirements in NPF 4 and the local development plan, and that NPF 4 must take precedence where there is a conflict, and it is not accepted that this should be considered as a brownfield site. Other material considerations outlined by the applicant and the local review body may wish to consider these, or of course any others. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Strachan. Do members have any questions for the planning and or the legal advisor? Councillor Davidson, please. Davidson.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bruce. I did try to go through NPF 4, 8 and 9. Can you just explain the differences between those two, just for clarification, because the agent has suggested we should be using 8 for the decision, whereas the planning service has used 9, but that might not be correct because it's not a derelict house, I think. But if you could just go through that and clarify it, please, I'd be very grateful.
Yes, of course, Councillor Davidson. So there's a distinction between, if I could just, I'm not, it's maybe not precisely your question, but it does get to the nub of the issue on this one, and that is there's a difference between the policy wording in National Planning Framework Policy 8 on green belts and the Local Development Plan Policy on green belts. One allows for the a one-for-one replacement of an existing dwelling house, so that's what's allowed under NPF 4, but in the Aberdeenshire Local Development Plan, which is slightly older, the distinction is that the replacement of vernacular buildings, which this one clearly is, in the Greenbelt is not allowed. So the Planning Service have relied on that local development plan policy saying that vernacular buildings cannot be replaced, whereas NPF 4 sort of doesn't go quite as far as that. Policy 9 in NPF 4 is the brownfield policy, and my professional view is that it isn't directly applicable to this case because this site as an existing dwelling house does not meet the definition of brownfield because that is usually vacant or derelict land or redundant or unused buildings. Members have probably seen numerous cases of brownfield sites come before them, and I'm a little bit confused, to be honest, why that has been used in this case, because I don't feel it meets the definition of brownfield under NPF 4.
Thanks very much. I did read it a few times. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goodall, were you before Councillor Dickinson?
I think so, but I'm perfectly prepared to be a gentleman and allow Councillor Dickinson to take precedence.
No, not
Okay.
at all.
Councillor Dickinson?
No, I was behind Councillor Goodall. I'm happy for
All
you to
right.
go
Oh, sorry. I thought you were in and that Councillor Goodall jumped the queue. All right, Councillor Goodall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this one is slightly confusing, and there's a few questions I'd like to ask. So we're just to confirm the vernacular cottage idea of in R1 that it shouldn't be allocated, or it shouldn't be allowed to demolish and then rebuild. That does not take precedence over policy R8. Policy 8. Policy 8 takes precedence over that. Yes.
That's correct.
View.
Well,
Thank you.
it's not my view. It's the legal position in the regulations that where there's a conflict, that the policy document which is newest should be the primary document, should take precedence. And there's only a month's difference between them, but no less. And I don't know if Mr. Ingram would have anything else to say on this, but NPF 4 policy 8 is the newer policy context in which decisions should be taken. Doesn't mean that members can't put some weight on what the local development plan says, but yes, NPF 4 is the newer document.
Thank you. Again, for confirmation and clarification, the extension was applied for yet refused, and yet the planners have stated that they would prefer this original cottage to be developed and extended. Is that the case?
Yes, that is correct. There was an application, which I haven't taken the drawings of, but there was an application to extend the cottage, which was felt to be of an inappropriate scale and design. First one was withdrawn and the second one was refused. That's correct. But the Planning Service have said, it's a big site. There would be scope to, extend this house in some sort of meaningful way that could potentially achieve, what the applicant is hoping for in terms of floor space. But obviously, it's not for the Planning Service to design that. Just to point out, I think there would probably be, an acceptable solution somewhere.
Thank you. Can I also ask about on page 28, 5.9? I'm slightly confused by that paragraph. It states here that the application only uses 28% of the application site area, a reduction of 19.29% compared to the existing build. Now, looking at the drawing, that the new build is substantially larger than the original. So is that statement in 5.9 correct?
It hasn't been contested by the planning service. I mean, you're right. The cottage. I mean, the cottage itself is 72 or 75 square meters. That building on plan is 300 and something square meters of dwelling house. But I suppose if you compare the proposed to, sorry, let me just go back to the existing site plan. You know, there's a sort of a collection of buildings and development that you know. May, if you add them all up, you know, they may come to, they may give you that figure. And I think also, if you look at the amount of hard standing and everything here, the way the site is currently laid out, now switch to the proposed plan, you know, the applicant is saying that they intend to restore some of this. So I don't know quite how that figure has been arrived at, but you know, it may be a combination of the removal of all these ancillary buildings and structures and the fact that, you know, they're going to restore some of this previous hard standing to a more natural state as they're showing in this plan here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dickinson, I noticed you indicated to talk and then I did, and then the system just cancelled you. So
Yes.
on you go
That
then,
is-
please.
Thank you. I think that is what happened when I spoke. My hand came down automatically.
Yeah.
So just a couple of questions here. So does the service agree that the fact that the building's not listed is a material consideration?
The planning service or my view, Councillor Dickinson?
What were your view? Or your view as you're
Well,
advising us today?
I think I don't think the fact that it's listed or unlisted is a significant material consideration here. It's that distinction within what the policy says and the fact this is a excuse me, a vernacular building, which I would agree it is within the green belt. That's the issue here,
Okay.
not whether it's listed.
Thank you. So I was really interested in your comments regarding policy 9 because I was struggling to understand what brownfield was and how that applied here. So it's been helpful to have your response on that. There is, from the planning service, quite a lengthy comment about the timing issues here, about the fact the LDP was only, was finally signed off only a month later, and that when it was being prepared, there was line of sight to what was happening with MPF4, and therefore that we need to sort of see this holistically. I wondered if you could comment on that argument that's made within the justifications for the position taken here, and therefore that we need to be, on the one hand, the planning service seems to have said, yes, it is the case that policy 8 takes precedence, but on the other hand, R1 was cognizant, and therefore there's a more holistic view that we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, it's quite complicated, and it's not something that's come up for a while since 2023 when MPF4 came in, really. But there was a draft plan, I seem to remember, in 2022, a draft NPF, and it may have been that document that the planning service had sight of. The LDP and the NPF were being developed in tandem, I suppose, and so they had an awareness of what the NPF document might say, but it may have changed between that, during the evolution of the plan writing between versions. But I think, I have to go with what the regulations say, which is that where there is a conflict, and there is, whether this is a conflict or whether it's an inconsistency, you could sort of debate, but whether where there's a conflict, that the document which is newer takes precedence and should be the primary consideration. But as I've said, members, that there is another document which is almost, as new as this, which is the local development plan, and which members can put some weight on, but I don't think they can put as much weight on what the Aberdeenshire approach is to this as the MPF4 document.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Don't know if
Thank you. Mr. Ingram, please.
Thank you. Just thought I'd maybe chip in my tuppence worth, in that I was certainly around at the time that the local development plan was in progress. So as Bruce has completely covered, I think the fundamental aspect is he's absolutely right. It's a matter of law that effectively they operate the later in date principle in terms of policy, and it is literally just a month's difference. So I think it was like 13th of January as opposed to 13th of February in relation to when the two development plans came into force. But yes, because NPF 4 was later in, that is the one that would take precedence in relation to whether there is a conflict. Now, I think that the language that Bruce was using there, I think, is probably what you as decision makers will need to take into account. It's probably a matter of interpretation whether you deem that is in conflict or whether you deem that there is an interpretive issue in relation to how you're judging that. And I think the one other aspect I'd bring in relation to that, which will hopefully kind of explain maybe the thinking in relation to the planning officer's consideration in relation to that, because the local development plan was brought into force so close to when NPF 4 came into effect. There was a process towards the last 6 months of the reporters assessing our local development plan that they did take into account the incoming policies of NPF 4 when they came in. So I think there is some context in relation to this. NPF 4 hasn't preceded, or NPF 4 hasn't come in a matter of years further down the line. It did come in a month afterwards, and LDP was very much adopted with the incoming NPF 4 in mind. So I think it's fair for the officer at the time to have taken that into account, because again, if there was an issue fundamentally with the LDP policy being in conflict, it wouldn't have got through that reporting process. So I think it is probably better to be thinking that in mind of, do you consider that to be an inconsistency, or do you actually see that as an outright conflict between the two? Because in the latter scenario, the advice you've been given from Bruce is absolutely correct. The NPF 4 was the later in policy, and that would take precedence if you do deem there's a conflict between the two. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland, please.
Good morning. Just a quick question on the fact that if it's not a listed building, does the age of the building and the condition of the building, is that outweighed by the fact that it's a vernacular building? Because I didn't notice an age, the date of the building being built. Maybe it is in the paper somewhere, but I couldn't see it. And I just wondered if the age and the condition of the building outweigh the fact that it's a vernacular, or does vernacular trump it as it's not listed? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sutherland. I think really, members will be aware of this sort of style of building throughout Aberdeenshire, and it's part of the character of Aberdeenshire, along with steadings and all these sorts of things. Some fairly modest utilitarian sort of buildings made out of natural stone with slate roof that are part of the rural character of Aberdeenshire, and lots of those have been lost over the years through policy allowances. So the idea is in the local development plan to a preference to retain these, and the embodied energy within them, and demolition to be the last resort kind of thing, that they should be extended, they should be restored, etc. And to that end, that there isn't anything within the Greenbelt policy that says what hoops you have to jump through, because there's a presumption that these buildings would be retained within the Greenbelt. If you move out with the Greenbelt, then there are policy tests in terms of doing structural surveys and things like that, to demonstrate the condition of the building and whether it's suitable for conversion, or whether it's in such a bad state of disrepair that it needs to be demolished. And they, to be fair to the applicant, in this case, they have undertaken that structural survey, and it's in the papers. It doesn't outright say that it's in such a poor state of repair that it needs to be demolished, but it does say that to obviously bring it up to modern standards, it requires a significant amount of investment, and that is part of the case that the applicant and agent are putting forward here. That in order to bring this home up to sort of modern standards, there's nothing much you can do with headroom and things like that, but in terms of underpinning and insulation and things like that, the amount of money is prohibitive in terms of what it would achieve. So that's all part of the mix and part of the argument that the applicant is putting forward in terms of why this vernacular building should be allowed to be demolished and replaced.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Goodall, please.
Just a question again for Bruce, I think, on the LDP NPF4 possible contradictions. If the LDP had come in after the NPF4, then we would have to give that more weight. Is that what we're saying? Because it's just, I'm trying to, in my own mind, from a legalistic point of view, there's the only thing that differentiates the weight between the two is the date of publishment or the date of acceptance. And to me, that doesn't seem to be enough of a reason to give it weight, if you follow.
I do follow, and it goes back to what myself and Martin have said, and Martin articulated a little bit of extra information there, which was that the local development plan had to be consistent with national policy when it was being developed. So if the local development plan, it may not have passed, it may not have been adopted if it was inconsistent with the NPF4, but in any event, had it been adopted after NPF4, 13th of February or whatever it was, 2023, then it would have taken precedent. It would have been the more up-to-date document, but obviously that's not the situation that we find ourselves in. But the regulations are clear. I can't remember, it was Regulation 24 or whatever it is of the 1997 Act says that where the newer document basically takes precedent over the older document, and that's not a matter of planning judgment. It's a matter of law.
Thank you. Mr. Ingram, please.
Yeah, and again, just to add in relation to that as well, that it's always worth bearing in mind that even if the local development plan had came into force after NPF4, it still gets assessed by reporters. And obviously, if there was something that was outright inconsistent or in conflict with NPF4, then that. So again, if that policy was going through the process right now, and again, I wouldn't want to start getting too speculative in relation to how something would or wouldn't get assessed, but it obviously gets assessed against what the extant NPF is at that particular time as well. So if there was something that was found in that was, completely in conflict or contradictory to NPF4, I suppose that would be picked up in that particular stage, so that whatever came into the subsequent local development plan couldn't be in and of itself directly in conflict. But of course, again, it may be an aspect in relation to a policy which might be, perfectly applicable and approvable, but just because in the particular circumstances, how it gets interpreted in relation to a particular planning application, you might find there's a situation where there's a conflict.
Thank you.
I could
Councillor
come back,
Goodall,
Chair.
you want to come back?
Yeah, please. That's my problem. From what I've heard, our LDP wouldn't have been approved by the reporter if it were in conflict with NPF4. But we find in this case that there is a conflict. It might be a small conflict, but there is a conflict. And that gives me a bit of an issue. It's a chicken and egg situation, but we'll see how the discussion develops after the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other indication, so we'll come in. I got two questions, one for Bruce and one for Mr. Ingram. Or both to Mr. Ingram. The first one, and Bruce, I think I seem to remember that you said NPF4 takes precedents and allows to replace 141. Is it 141 as such, or is it 141 including the surface of the dwelling? I.e., can somebody replace a small shed by a big house, or does the NPF4 policy, which evades me, which number evades me now, dictate that the shed can be replaced by a dwelling, but it should be the same surface? You see the point?
I do, Chair. So no, the policy, the NPF4 policy 8 for related to green belts is 1-for-1 replacements of an existing permanent home. So it's only replacement homes that are allowed here, not like in the wider countryside where you can replace sheds and things like that.
Okay, but it doesn't stipulate that it has to be the same surface.
It doesn't. No,
Okay.
the text within NPF4 is that's it really, 1-for-1 replacement of existing permanent homes,
Okay.
and it's how the planning service interprets that within the existing cartilage, etc., etc. It's layout, siting,
Right.
and design.
Thank you. And a question for Mr. Ingram. It is my understanding, or sorry, let me rephrase that. Am I right to understand that NPF4, even if it comes before the LDP3, would still take precedence because it is dictated by the Scottish government, which takes precedence over councils, I would say, in case of inconsistencies? Am I right?
So
am I right to assess that?
So I'll come back to the advice that Bruce and I myself have both given, that it's a matter of law that whichever of the two has come in later is the one that takes precedence.
Yes.
But the point I would make in relation to that is that, because so again, to Councillor Goodall's question in relation to, again, if it had been the other way around, if a local development plan comes in before NPF4, then that is the most recent one that has come in.
Yeah.
But it couldn't come in without authorization from the Scottish government, so it would always be, in effect, deemed to be compliant with whatever the extant NPF is at that particular time, because it will be assessed by Scottish government and by reporters who make sure that's the case. So again, from that perspective, my view, and again, I don't know if Bruce is going to come back in relation to this, but I would assert that there isn't a direct conflict between those policies, to the extent that if there had been a direct conflict, I am assuming that is something that would have been picked up by the reporters at the tail end of the reporters assessing local development plan, because it was so close to when NPF4 was coming into force, and that was very much I say about the last 6 months of that process was taking into effect what the implications of NPF4 would have been on the local development plan. But from your perspective as decision makers, I think what you're looking at in this regard is you can certainly interpret that the Aberdeenshire policies are more permissive than what NPF4 provides. And you obviously need to be careful in light of how you're interpreting that against NPF4 and the fact that factually NPF4 de facto takes precedence because it was introduced later than the local development plan was.
Okay, now let me rephrase that. The two sets of policies are supposed to be complementary. However, in the case of a discrepancy, the NPF4 will take precedence because it comes from the Scottish government, irrespective of the dates at which they were published. Bruce. Oh, sorry. Sorry, yeah. Mr. Ingram, please.
No, it's okay. I see Bruce has got his hand up, so I'll defer.
Bruce.
I was just going to highlight again. Mark may want to say that, but the document, the NPF4 document, doesn't take precedent just because it comes from the Scottish Government. Members know that I also provide the same role to another council, and in that council we have a local development plan which is more up to date than NPF4, and it takes precedent in some cases. So it's not just who published the document, it's, you know, it's back to that date of the document. So in the other council I work, there's a local development plan that is newer than the NPF, and there are elements of the rural housing policy in there that take precedent over what it says in NPF4 because it is the newer document. So just in case that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. So therefore you are saying that is the date which is paramount. Thank you. All right, well, I'll stop here. Councillor Dickinson, please.
Chair, thank you for letting me come back in.
You are most welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, we've got the word conflict and we've got the word inconsistency, and I'm just getting my head around what those mean in this context, because I do understand that obviously the local development plan wouldn't have been approved if it was in utter conflict. But obviously there's so many scenarios you might have a case of inconsistency that could arise, and I think this is what we have here, is we have two documents that can't be in conflict, or they wouldn't have both been, you know, ours wouldn't have been approved. But we do have some inconsistency because of the reference to vernacular, the vernacular building that we have in the R1 policy. And then I go back to the I've got them up here on my other screen, the reasons for refusal. And the second one, which relates to policy 9, feeds in the arguments that are put before us, that is feeding the first refusal, because part of the issue here is whether or not the existing vernacular building could be kept and enhanced. And yet, so I'm just, you know, can you just clarify for me? So the question here is that I'm trying to get my head around is, am I right that in some way that first argument of refusal is weaker if you don't have the second argument that leans into policy 9? Bruce, are you understanding my question?
Yes, and it is complicated, Councillor Dickinson, and I think that's my reservation with the use of policy 9. The planning service have said, and quite correctly, that the development plan has to be read as a whole and to take a holistic approach to it. But you know, I think obviously that needs to be fully justified, and I do fail to see how the site can be categorised as a brownfield site and how policy 9 applies. But there is nothing in the LDP about you know, in policy 8, sorry, in policy R1, the policy does say it's expected that the replacement building, so if you were to replace a building, it has to be consistent in scale, no more intrusive, and the new building will demonstrate a significant improvement in design over the existing building. But it still doesn't allow for, you know, the replacement of a vernacular building. And those tests about demonstrating alternatives or demonstrating structural integrity, etc., aren't within the Greenbelt policy, because there's a presumption against the removal of these vernacular buildings. You see what I mean? So it's
no, exactly.
Yeah, it's a circular argument, but I do struggle, as I think you said, that with the use of policy 9 in this exact case, because I don't think it meets the definition of a brownfield site, because it's an existing dwelling house, and there's there's separate policies that govern that.
So just for clarity, so there is within policy, within R1, there is no burden to show that the vernacular building has to be maintained at all costs. I mean, there or can't be, you know, there is no what am I trying to say? This issue of maintaining the vernacular building, I do understand how it's written, but as you've just said, there's nothing to qualify that, because the assumption is it would be maintained.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Councillor Goodall, please.
It's a question for both officers, really, and also perhaps to you, Chair. I think, given that the crux of this is the brownfield site issue, can we decide separately whether this is a brownfield site and then take our decision thereafter?
Mr. Ingram, is this competent?
I mean, I think my preference would be part of arriving at that. Your decision will be what your interpretation is of whether you feel that meets the definition of a brownfield site or not. You've obviously got the information in relation to how that was originally arrived at by the planning officer, and you have the advice now of Mr. Strachan in relation to his interpretation of that. For me, that will be part of how you arrive at a decision of whether you can uphold the decision or if you want to review it.
Councillor Goodall, you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, I understand Martin's position, but I just thought that might make our deliberations clearer if we decided on that first, and then make the policies that we have to apply a wee bit clearer. I don't know.
We have, of course, the advice from Bruce to take into consideration as well, as he stated that he doesn't believe that this is a brownfield site, because the house is still occupied. It's not a derelict site. You see the point?
Yeah, I see the point, but as I say, I made well, you heard me say what I said, but I think you just think it would be clearer to decide on that first and then take it from there.
Well, okay. Mr. Ingram, can we do that?
Again, my advice would be, I think it would be more robust if you're making a decision on whether you uphold the review or not, and obviously whether you individually as members interpret that to be a brownfield site or not will obviously inform how you land in that regard. But I think it'd be preferable if that all forms part of your ultimate decision on whether you uphold the review or not.
So this would be part of our decision instead of before it. Okay, thank you.
That would be my advice, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Are you okay with that, Councillor Goodall?
Yeah, that's fine, as long as we're
okay, thanks.
Clear. Thank you.
Councillor Davidson, please.
Yeah, I just wondered if I could make a motion.
Please, yes.
Okay.
Hold on. Before that, do members have sufficient information to determine the review? Do you require additional information and/or a site visit?
I have sufficient, thank you.
Thank you.
Sufficient information.
I have sufficient information, thank you.
Good, thank you. All right. In that case, Councillor Davidson, please proceed.
Thank you very much. You know, I read this and I felt when I originally read it that I was in support of the officer's recommendations, and I think that's why it's really good to have this discussion, because I have really quite about turned on that, because you know, if you read the information, they have tried to renovate this house. They have stripped it out. They have dug out the foundations, which I think is why they've maybe come to this decision, because they've never filled in the foundations again afterwards. So, it has been renovated certainly to an extent, and I understand that, you know, they apparently have not managed to complete that. And I do think there is a conflict absolutely between the LDP and NPF 4, but I also think, sorry.
Yeah, please.
But I also feel that officers are perhaps not used the correct policy, because this clearly isn't the brownfield site. It is a vernacular building on a site, and the NPF 4 therefore permits, it is the substantive planning advice or planning regulation, and it therefore permits the development or other placement of this property. So I do think that we uphold the notice of review and reverse the appointed officer's decision to grant full planning permission because it does comply with NPF 4.9, I think it is the one it complies with. And that takes precedent over local LDP 1. And I look for a second there.
R1 or whatever.
R1, yes.
Okay. Subject to conditions, I take it.
Yes, it'll be subject to conditions.
And you seek a second.
I do.
Thank you. Councillor Dickinson.
Yes, I'm content to second, but I believe it agrees with policy NPF 4.8, not 9. I understand where Isabel's coming from, but my understanding is it's 8. And I don't think there's, the only thing I'm not completely sure I agree with is that there is conflict. I would use the language of inconsistency. And I don't think there's a burden to prove in the current policy, even of R1, that the building is incapable of retention. That sits elsewhere in policy 9, which I don't think has a place here because this is not a brownfield site, a derelict site, or a vacant site.
Mm.
So am I correct that this is NPF 4.8?
Bruce, can you just clarify that? I was getting confused by the two.
Yes, it is policy 8,
Okay.
development in the green belt. Yes.
Yes. So yes,
Okay.
and that's it. So it complies with it, and it takes precedence, and that's really the core of my motion.
Okay, good.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. You want to add other policies onto it, or you just stick with that, Councillor Davidson?
No, it's only that policy. That is the policy that makes this decision,
good.
in my view, necessary.
Right, thank you. Well, we have a motion which has been proposed and seconded, which stands. Is there any amendment to be proposed? Councillor Goodall.
Oh, thank you, Chair. My motion would be to uphold the officer's recommendations based.
So dismiss the review.
Yeah, dismiss the review based on basically R1, which I believe that we should be looking at this whole policy, or both policies, in a holistic view, as has been stated by officers. I think that the appearance in the countryside of these houses is more important than replacing with a modern, much larger building. And although policy-wise, my arguments are very, very weak, I understand that. But from, as I said, a holistic view and from our green belt policies, I think this would be the wrong decision to make. Thank you.
Can you seek a second?
And I seek a seconder.
Thank you. Anybody seconding what Councillor Goodall just said? I don't see any appetite for it, Councillor Goodall.
That's fine.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a motion which has been proposed and seconded, which is standing. There is no amendment currently standing. So I take it that we agree with the motion on not unanimously, but majority. Thank you. Ms. Donovan, can you summarize, please?
Thank you, Chair. The LRB has agreed by a majority to uphold the notice of review and reverse the appointed officer's decision and to grant full planning permission on the grounds that the application complies with the National Planning Framework Policy 8.
That's right, subject to conditions. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you all. Well, we have been 1 hour going. Do you want 10 or 15 minutes stop? Yes,
Yes,
no,
please.
sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay, well, 10 or 15.
10's plenty, isn't it?
10's plenty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. See you back at 11:25.